Hi, I'm from OK. You're in the stream. Welcome to our 2020 election preview special. Next week's face-off between Republican President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden is likely to be one of the most consequential elections in US history. Americans are going to the polls motivated by race relations, immigration policies, the state of the economy, the handling of the pandemic and women's rights. In addition to this, the White House, congressional seats and numerous other state and local elections will also be contested. The results could change the course of US politics for years to come. As always, I'm not going to be doing this by myself. We are live on YouTube. So for the next hour, we're bringing you stories and discussions beyond the statistics and spotlight the people and policies that will be most affected by this election. We want to hear from you. We are managing the chat, so it's a totally safe zone to talk about politics. Type in your questions or your comments, and I will share as many as I can with our guests. Across the country, discussing politics has divided households. We checked in with one divided home. You're about to hear from Myra and Anthony Segura. Regular stream viewers will recognise them from our immigrant town halls. Myra and Anthony generally get on pretty well, except when it comes to who they believe should be president.
The lowest unemployment in Hispanics, in African Americans.
But that is not true.
Yes, it is. The statistics say that.
Which statistics? They say that you're saying in some kind of channels in the news, but no, everybody say that.
You need to start watching Fox News.
I don't gonna watch Fox News, believe me. But
watch
that is exactly that happens.
Al Jazeera News.
Yeah, we can watch something that can be realistic, not just supportive to the president. That's the point. Everybody has their own statistic. We need to be realistic for know what is happening in the country right now.
A little bit of America right there. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Myra. This year, the US was overtaken by anti-racism protests that saw hundreds of thousands of Americans pour into the streets to express sorrow and anger over the police killing of an unarmed man, George Floyd. It was a moment that resonated across the world. Candidate Joe Biden has laid out a comprehensive plan to address racial disparities, ranging from health to policing. Donald Trump has talked about creating a platinum plan, pledging to create millions of jobs for Black Americans. Take a look at what President Trump told reporters in July.
I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. When con men, who I've known almost all my business life, because I had to deal with him, unfortunately, in New York. But I got along with him, Al Sharpton. Now, he's a racist. He's a racist. But when people, let me explain to you. What I've done for African Americans in 2.5 years, no president has been able to do anything like it.
To help us break things down from Baltimore, we have Kwame Rose. He is a social activist and writer. In Minneapolis, Resmaa Menakem is a therapist, healer and author. And in Los Angeles, Melina Abdallah is a professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State Los Angeles and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. Guests, it is so good to see you. So President Trump says, what has the president done for African Americans? He claims he has done so much. Melina, what would you put on your list for what President Trump has done over the last 4 years for African Americans?
Sure, he's done a lot to African Americans, right? We need to be clear that he's done a lot to African Americans. He's emboldened white supremacy. He's led to the greatest spike in hate crimes, primarily against Black people on record. He has doubled down on police brutality and police violence. He has created economic conditions where now it's projected that half of Black-owned businesses will never recover after the pandemic. He has ushered in greater medical racism than we've ever seen in my lifetime. So he's done a whole lot to Black America, and that's what we need to be clear about.
Resmaa, you're nodding up a storm.
Yeah, so Sister Melina has it exactly right. That these kind of propaganda tools that he throws out there, notice that they always go unexamined. He gets to throw out anything. He can say absolutely anything, and he knows that these reporters only have 30 seconds or 5 seconds to actually interrogate what it is that he's actually saying. And so he plays this game about black people. He trots out certain black people who fawn all over him and get certain types of personal gain from aligning themselves with him. But it is not, the stuff that he says is not about collective black people, right? What happened to black people did not happen to black people individually. And what continues to happen to black people is not happening to us individually. It is happening collectively. And what he wants to do is gaslight us and try and make us believe that he's doing something when he's actually not. But you know, that he's always been a carnival barker, and he's just taking it to the extreme.
Kwame, I'd love you to do some analysis on this conversation that we had with Leslie Taha. Let's have a listen and then come off the back of it.
The Black Lives Matter movement is not what it appears to be on the surface. On the surface, one might think that it is an organization that's here to promote the interests of African Americans, but it is not. It is an organization that's financed by multi-billionaires such as George Soros, the Ford Foundation, and many others. And it is here to promote their own interests, their own secret agenda. And one other thing I would like to say, I've been a Democrat for pretty much my whole life. But the president that is going to be in the interest of African Americans is the president that would be in the interest of all Americans. And that would be Donald Trump, because he is fighting against these manipulators that are trying to destroy our country.
There is conversation amongst people of colour about who they should vote for. Part of the conversation is, why would you not vote for this particular candidate? And that is going on both sides of the aisle. Kwame, where do you sit on this? I say this having seen one of your tweets from a little while ago, and it says here, there is nothing you can tell me that will make me vote for a white man to be president ever again. I've taken that out of context, but you put it in context for us.
Yeah, I'll put it plainly. There is nothing exciting about the candidacy of Joe Biden. And this election in particular, I don't think that people are voting for Joe Biden as much as they are voting against Donald Trump. We can all agree Donald Trump hasn't even made his base better. The white supremacists and Proud Boys, they're not getting economically free. They're still just as poor as black folks in projects in Baltimore, Detroit, and Los Angeles. And so I think that this election boils down to the complacency of America. And that is, we have liberals on one side wanting to move back to a centrist agenda that really doesn't meet the progressive needs of young voters. And me as a young black voter, right? I'm not excited to vote for Joe Biden. However bad Trump might be, I still don't think that Joe Biden meets my needs.
And I think, can I just say, I think that everybody black that I know and everybody progressive that I know agrees with you, right? Yeah. And so Kwame is exactly right. Everybody who's going to the polls, and we are enthusiastically going to the polls, we're going to the polls to get Trump out. We're going to the polls because local elections demand that we get to the polls. We have to vote for some really exciting ballot measures. We have to vote out our district attorneys in places like Los Angeles. But I think that this should be, I don't know why the Democratic Party didn't learn a lesson after they ran Hillary Clinton and expected black folks to just line up behind her.
Melina, I have to share this with you. So sorry to butt in, because it feels so perfect. This is May 2020, and candidate Joe Biden was on a morning show. The audience was mostly African American. This is what he said just at the end. Let's have a listen.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. I mean, come on. Take a look at the record.
Right. Who is Joe Biden to tell black people what it means to be black? We got to remember that Joe Biden was presented as a counterbalance to Barack Obama. He's now trying to ride Barack Obama's coattails, but Joe Biden was meant to send a message to white voters that it's okay to vote for this, really what's a moderate black candidate, because Joe Biden was to the right of him. And so it's really important that we remember that we're out there to vote against Trump, but the Democratic Party has to run better candidates. Every single person who was on the stage was better and more exciting than Joe Biden, and we still wound up with Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate.
I think that leads us back to exactly where we are in 4 or 8 more years, right? We keep letting white liberals and the Democratic Party off the hook. And the thing about Trump, right? Remember Election Day, you had all these white folk who were shocked. Like, we have this blatant racist in office, as if it hadn't happened for the last 400 years since the inception of America. And so even now it's saying, like, we're saying, let's vote for Joe Biden, who thinks that he can pander to black folks because he has black best friends, or he's Barack Obama's best friend. Like Trump said at the debate, when Biden brought up, well, you put kids in cages, Trump said, well, you and your administration built the cages. So let's not act as if Joe Biden is going to be this continuance of this utopic black savior that we were presented as Barack Obama being. Kwame. There's still evil on both sides.
Kwame, let me just share this with you from Nigel. 1 second. Nigel says, Joe Biden, this is on YouTube right now, listening to you guess, Joe Biden doesn't meet the needs, but he's the lesser of two evils, obviously. And then Mohammed Mazami says, his heart says Biden, but his mind says Trump. Resma, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think that I just really appreciate about what Brother Kwame is talking about is that we can't expect our oppressor to also be our savior, right? We can't expect the descendants of the people that oppressed and enslaved my people and committed genocide on the indigenous people to now turn around and be our savior. That's not, in this moment in time, I don't believe that's the question.
Right.
I believe the question is, right now, if we don't vote or we vote for Trump, we're going to get a doubling down of the pain that our people are experiencing in this moment in time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Joe Biden, listen, I know the history of Joe Biden and everything he's done. And Sis is right. He is to the right of who Barack Obama was. But in this moment in time, voting is not, for me, is not necessarily voting for Joe Biden. It's a vote towards curtailing the violence that's occurring to our people.
Yes, it took us 4 years to get here. We're not going to solve it in the time we have for this segment, but there's something I'm going to ask you to do. It is extremely challenging. In a word, sum up the legacy of President Trump, we should say for the last 4 years, because who knows what will happen on November the 3rd. Melina, what would be your word for President Trump? I say Trump, you say what?
Racist, fascist, oppressor.
Extra words there, that's okay. Rasma, I say President Trump and you say what?
Despotic.
Kwame.
He's a despot.
Wrap us up, Kwame.
I'd say revealing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, guests. Really appreciate you. Melina, Kwame, Resma, and we are wrapping up.
The answer to Trump is the people. The answer to Trump is the people.
All right. Thank you, guests. Now I'm going to switch topics. We have spoken frequently to the disability community over the past 4 years. We checked in with some of our friends of the stream, and they shared their thoughts with us about this election. Let's have a listen.
Voting was inaccessible for the very disabled people before the pandemic. And one of my biggest concerns is how the voter suppression targets multiple communities with the understanding that there are many disabled people of color They were harmed by both racist and ableist tactics. There are states such as Alabama, which banned curbside voting as an accommodation under the ADA. In Texas, it is legal to have one drop box for absentee ballots per county. The reduction of polling places creates long lines where people have to risk the exposure to COVID-19. And not everyone has the energy to wait and be outside for hours. People need to recognize that voter suppression is a disability issue.
Currently, voters with disabilities encounter two major challenges. The first is a failure of a lot of states to ensure that absentee voting is private and independent. This is a long-standing issue that has been around for many states that rely on paper-based absentee voting programs, but it becomes especially critical under the COVID-19 pandemic when in-person voting poses a lot of risks of infection. Second, a broader issue is a failure of a lot of states to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access to all voting programs.
Despite being the largest minority group, the disability community is often overlooked. We have the numbers to make a difference, but there are so many obstacles that stand in the way. It's not just about physical accessibility, though of course that's important, but people without disabilities tend not to take into account or to ignore people with disabilities. They'll promote election security, but not see the impact that has on accessibility. Or even electoral candidates, they won't cater to the disability community when they're campaigning or won't consider them when pushing out their policies. This promotes an ableist mindset that needs to be changed to create a fair system where all votes are counted and all voices are heard.
Immigration policy has been a key part of Donald Trump's America First platform. His supporters see his actions as highlighting the strength of his leadership. Opponents say his immigration policies diminish the U.S. on the world stage. The issue of child separation at the southern U.S. border and immigration came up in the third and final presidential debate. Let me remind you.
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
merit.
how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
With us to discuss all things immigration in Novi, Michigan, we have Adi Sati. He is a Republican strategist. In Tijuana, Mexico, Erica Pinero is a policy and litigation director at El Otro Lado. That's a non-profit that provides free legal aid. And in Tucson, Arizona, Bisan Abu Quake is an Al Jazeera Arabic correspondent. Hello, guests. It's really good to have you here. All right, Erica, let's start. We hear a lot of talk about immigration, a lot of talk about the southern U.S. border. Make it real for us. Tell us a story that takes us there and into the work that you're doing so we understand this is not just a talking point, the people's lives we're talking about.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And during the Trump administration, we saw thousands of children separated from their parents, thousands more separated from other family members, and a wholesale destruction of the asylum system. This administration has implemented a number of policies that have effectively blocked access to protections in the United States, and have resulted in tens of thousands of vulnerable migrants being trapped at the U.S.-Mexico border in some of the most dangerous cities in the world, and really being punished merely for trying to seek protection in the United States. The situation now, especially with the CDC-related border closures, is really dire for a lot of these people, and many are losing hope in their personal American dream of safety and prosperity in the United States.
Adi, as we're looking at this sort of legacy of the last 4 years of President Trump, as a Republican strategist, are you really happy with where you are in terms of immigration policy? Is it exactly where you think it should be?
President Trump, when he campaigned for the presidency in 2016, he spent a lot of time talking about immigration and reforming the system. That is not just, of course, at the southern border, but also with issues that were essentially happening within the immigration system in America from people coming from other countries as well. A lot of people taking advantage of the system, a lot of legal immigrants in our country that were being disenfranchised by illegal immigration, and then also, of course, people in this country that were not able to have jobs because of people from other parts of the world that are coming here and taking those jobs. So I think President Trump really wanted to make sure he emphasized the America First policies that he put forth, and he really has doubled down on that and made sure that he has stepped up and kept his promises. And I think that the immigration system has been very much reformed in many ways, and it's going to continue to be able to do that in the next 4 years in his second term. And I think that's something that you're going to end up seeing when you talk about the border.
I'm not hearing happiness, though, Adi. I said, are you happy with where the immigration policy is right now? I'm not hearing happiness.
I'm absolutely happier
listing.
than where it was before. I'm absolutely happier than where it was before, but I think that we can obviously see more reform.
All right, let me show you somebody who is very happy about where we are right now. Jesse Singh, he represents the Sikh community for Trump. This is what he told us earlier. Have a listen.
The Sikhs have seen a very big shift in the Sikh community and other minority communities in their support towards President Trump. I personally feel it. I've seen it at ground levels. And I think one remarkable thing that the Sikh community can say that it happened under President Trump was the Religious Freedom Act that President Trump signed in 2017, which gives all Sikhs right to serve in the U.S. Army and other security agencies with their beard and turban as a part of the uniform. So I would say it was a great thing overall for the Sikh community.
I want you to hear from Bisan Abu Quaik. She is an Al Jazeera Arabic correspondent. She is literally on the road right now, in a car, on the road, reporting on this election. We are going to meet her in just a moment. But before we go to the break, I have something that I really want to show you. And I'm going to leave you with this. It is President Trump, and he is speaking to sheriffs around the country in 2018 about immigrants coming to sanctuary cities. Have a listen.
We have people coming into the country or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy.
What's the guess? All right. Bisan, hello. You're You're literally on the road. I'm coming straight to you, Visan, for the stories about the voters that you've been talking to, and one of them that we're going to play a bite from. Adi, hello, welcome. Usually I say welcome at the beginning, but because we've got a show in the middle, so I'm just going to do it now to you. Erica, thank you. I love it when guests talk to each other. Don't think I'm interviewing you, OK? I want you to chat back and forth, if that's possible, and pick up from each other and not feel I'm in my little silos and Femi's asking me a question. One question from one person is a question for everybody, but from your different perspectives. Adi, you're going to be the strategist. Erica, you're going to be working on the ground. You like really in contact with people and their stories. Bisan, you are sucking it up and trying to explain it to the world who are watching Al Jazeera Arabic. And so chat to each other. That would be wonderful. Don't feel that it's just an individual conversation. I really want it to be a round table. All right. Sure. And we've got time when we come back from break. So sorry I had to say hello in the middle, but I'm glad I got to say hello. All right. Sit tight.
Right,
We'll be with
you.
you. I'll be with you in a second. Welcome back. I'm Femi OK. You are watching the Stream's US election preview. We are joined by expert panelists on race relations, electoral politics and immigration. We're also on YouTube and looking to you to be our pundits. I know you don't need a second invitation. Share your questions and comments and be part of this show. Let's get back to talking about immigration. In Novi, Michigan, we have Adi Sati. He is a Republican strategist. In Tijuana, Mexico, Erica Pinero is a policy and litigation director at El Alto Lado. And in Tucson, Arizona, Bisan Abu Quake is an Al Jazeera Arabic correspondent. Bisan, you have been reporting for Al Jazeera Arabic, so you are trying to tell Al Jazeera Arabic viewers what is going on in the elections. What is your strategy? How are you doing that?
I mean, in terms of explaining to the Middle Eastern viewers what's happening.
What's their appetite? What is their appetite for this election, and what are they really curious about?
The appetite is huge. People are very interested in this election. They understand that, it's unlike any election cycle that has happened before. People want to know what's going on. They are interested in a lot of details that you would think people in the Middle East would be not that interested in, because they feel that this is, a monumental election.
What details? Do they want to know how many people are in the, the Senate seats? That kind of granular detail? What kind of details?
I actually worked on a specific story that was like graphics related story explaining the congressional race.
Wow.
That was before I left actually Washington to our viewers, because people understand that if the Democrats take over the Senate, for instance, and they keep the House, a lot of the policies would be affected by that. So they do understand the balance of power in Washington. And of course, they're very interested in the president and President Trump and, his tweets and what he says and all of that, and how he actually describes his opponent, Joe Biden. So yes, it feels, I think, in the Middle East that, the elections is a big thing that people want to know, because it also affects foreign policy in the region, too.
Let me remind you of an Instagram post that you posted back in 2017 in January. And this is of Washington Dulles International Airport. And what you are seeing here is the first few days of what has been known as the Muslim ban. This is in the early days of the Trump presidency. If you could look back at that time, how would you explain it and understand it now, 3 years later?
I mean, I would just go back to the time in 2016, President Trump had said a lot of things about, banning Muslims coming into the country. And then this happened, which basically reinforced an idea that people in the Middle East had, or he sort of, delivered one way or the other on a promise that he had made in his 2016 campaign. Definitely, the images were shocking at the time, having people stranded at airports, not being able to enter, and then seeing a lot of the lawyers and the activists at the airport, going and volunteering to represent people who have, been unable to enter the country at the time because of that sudden Muslim ban that happened basically overnight.
Adi is watching this. He's a Republican strategist. Adi, when you're seeing those pictures of the families being traumatized back in January 2017, is this what you're comfortable with, or how would you frame it?
Well, for me, I've lived in Washington at different times when I was working in different capacities. I worked in the U.S. Senate for a period of time, worked for the Republican National Committee for a period of time. You see protests every single day. I'm not saying that this one is not more important than any other one, but I'm just saying that in this particular instance, there were a lot of issues with immigration in the United States, and the president campaigned on many different initiatives that he wanted to put forth, and the travel ban. The travel ban was specifically one of them. And so he ultimately did do what he said he wanted to do to reform the system. And so I think a lot of people would be upset no matter who the president is, and no matter what they do, you see protests and you see people in all kinds of situations. But I think that people did handle a lot of these situations, and people did ultimately have the ability to, get where they need to be, and things I think were better off ultimately because of it.
Erica, let me share this with you. This is one of our community following online. And he says, having Trump, this is on Twitter right now, having Trump for a second term is excruciating torture. His foreign policy and take on immigrants is wanting. His 4 years was a night of darkness, but hopefully morning is coming. That's pretty poetic, the way that he put it. I'm just going to scroll it up here so you can see it very clearly. Erica, how do you characterize the last 4 years thinking about immigration?
I would have to agree with that post. It has been torture, especially for people affected by these policies. I would disagree with Adi by saying that most people got where they needed to go after the Muslim ban and other travel bans that have been implemented by this administration. There are thousands of families still separated, including Indian H-1B holders. Let's not forget, in July of this year, the Trump administration issued a ban on entry for work visa holders, which resulted in hundreds of families being separated. And so the rhetoric around legal versus illegal immigration, or the fact that it's just another protest, is disingenuous. Real people are suffering because of these policies. Families are being kept apart because of these policies. And I shudder to think what Stephen Miller will be able to accomplish in a second term, where he is already planning to push policies that are unpalatable for a president that's seeking re-election.
Ali, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think listening to what you're saying, I'm a fellow person of Indian origin, so addressing what you were talking about in regards to H-1B visas, I'm not necessarily partial to one particular community or my own community. I know that that's what you're probably trying to address, but I do think there were issues with the H-1B system as well. And so I think, a lot of people are taking advantage of that system. There are people of Indian origin who are living here who are Americans, who are having trouble working in and around the economic system that we have created because of the abuse in the system that exists even with H-1B holders and other aspects of immigration that we have seen. And, if you don't have a country with borders, then what is a country at all? You have to be able to make sure you protect the people that are here. You have to protect the American people first. And I think that's what the president has been trying to do.
Let me bring in some of the reporting that Bisan has been doing. Bisan, you brought to us Tatiana Penna. Have a listen, and then Bisan, you can explain why you spoke to her. This is Tatiana.
President Trump was never calling all Latinos or all immigrants rapists and murderers. When I heard him say that, I actually thought, wow, he's telling the truth, because we would even see within our Spanish media the reports about all the people being raped and murdered and abused as they came illegally through the coyotes. That a lot of times those are part of the criminal cartels, and those criminal cartels have been destroying Latin America. So people have woken up within these 4 years to know the truth, that no, that's not President Trump. We're still here. We're still prospering. The Latino community has been very, very blessed and very fortunate with the lowest unemployment numbers ever.
Bisan, why did you interview Tatiana?
So basically, I was working on a story about the Latino vote here in Arizona. 24%, around 24% of eligible voters in Arizona are Hispanic voters. So we spoke with people from different backgrounds about what they think of the elections and how they view it. So Tatiana was one angle in the story, and she is basically running for local office here as a Republican. And, it was interesting to talk to her and hear her perspective, because I spoke also with a young man earlier before speaking to Tatiana. His father was deported. He is actually an American citizen now. His siblings are DACA recipients, and he will not be able to vote because he will turn 18 just 10 days after the elections. But he had been active with other organizations and Latino organizations here to get people out to vote. We also spoke with a Latina who was a union member. She had lost her job in the hospitality sector, and she has diabetes. She lost her health insurance, and she was, getting people out to vote for Vice President Biden, the Democratic candidate. So Tatiana provided a different perspective to that story, and to balance it out, basically, and to provide our viewers in the Middle East with a new perspective that not everyone who was affected by immigration necessarily is going to be voting for the Democratic
candidate. And that came out loud and clear in that interview with Tatiana. Thank you for sharing it with us. I'm going to go quickly into YouTube. Ashley Lauren says, I think Trump is doing better with immigration than most, attempting to prioritize kids first and America's skills and safety needs first. DNA border tests, kids in the hotels, improving facilities. That's good. All right, Erica, in a sentence, if you can sum up immigration policy for the last 4 years, how would you do it? Ali the same, Bisan the same. Erica, you start.
The Trump administration's immigration policies constitute massive human rights violations that have become a stain on America's moral standing in the world.
Thank you, Erica. Ali, go ahead.
America First policies are actually making a difference in creating a better economy for people here in all communities, including the Latino community, including the Black community and including the Asian American community, and that is what we are seeing, and those are facts.
And Bisan lets her reporting speak for itself. And I won't put her on the spot and ask her for a personal take. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Bisan, for joining us. Thank you, Ardi. From immigration to the votes of Indigenous Americans, we heard from several members of a community on what is motivating them to go to the polls.
4 years ago, during the last presidential election, Indigenous water protectors were being beaten, tased, shot at with rubber-coated bullets by militarized police protecting an oil pipeline on the borderlands of the Standing Rock Reservation. Everyone on those front lines knew the stakes of a Trump presidency, particularly with what happened to Indigenous lands. What happens to the land is often stark metaphor for how we treat our most vulnerable people, and here in America, that often represents Indigenous peoples. The fight to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline continues, alongside a number of other land-back cases and causes inextricably intertwined to our treaties, which never expire. And so when you talk to Native voters about what's sending them to the polls, it certainly is the land. But it's also about clean air, clean water, protecting our animals, our elders, our children, our homeless, and standing up for our stolen sisters.
Some of the biggest issues of concern when it comes to Indigenous peoples' rights are our tribal sovereignty, protection and justice for our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the need for more funding and resources for healthcare and COVID relief, and the protection of our lands and sacred sites from mineral extraction. That's just to name a few. And frankly, all of these issues are at stake in these elections. You know, it's scary to think about how our tribal communities, but also our communities of color across America.
And yes, the last 4 years with the Trump administration, we've seen a rise, an incredible rise of xenophobic racist attacks upon Native peoples, Native lands, and Native rights. But with the Biden administration, I fully expect for us to be fighting and defending those very same things as well, but to a far lesser degree. We can't ignore the fact that the United States of America is a settler state that occupies stolen land that is predicated upon the oppression of many for the benefit of a few. And until we face that fact, we're going to continue to see conflict. But truth be told, I see an easier path to our goals for Indigenous nationhood and sovereignty with a Biden-Harris administration. But we're not giving up. It's not a slam dunk win. Just the fight is a little bit easier.
It has been a long election cycle, and as the race enters its final days before candidates have been travelling around the country, making last-minute appeals to undecided voters. But more than 85 million Americans have already voted, and there is so much uncertainty about what the next week is going to look like. Here to help us look ahead, in Little Rock, we have Noelle Nikpour. She is a Republican strategist. In Washington, D.C., Democratic strategist Brad Jenkins, and Al Jazeera's White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett is right here with me in the studio. It's like pre-COVID times, Kimberly. So lovely to see you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. I love this comment in our YouTube chat talking about where we are right now. This is Jose Guo. I feel like this election shows democracy in action. Whether or not their brand and version of democracy is worth preserving is another question. Oh, Nicole, are you seeing democracy in action right now?
You know what? I certainly am. I am so encouraged by the fact that everybody is exercising their right to vote. And whether you're on the Biden-Harris team or the Trump-Pence team, you are passionate, you are fired up, and you are very educated on all the issues, which is very refreshing in my opinion. It's democracy in action.
Noelle, excuse me for calling you Nicole. I put your first and your second name together and I got a wrong name, but you knew who I was talking about. Brad, yes. Are we seeing democracy in action?
We 100%. We are 100% seeing democracy in action. I think the challenge, though, and I think Noelle will agree with me, is we're seeing a president who is already trying to circumvent and suppress the votes of millions of people. By saying we need someone to be announced the winner on election night. I think that Noelle would agree with me that Donald Trump, he may come from the reality show world, but our democracy is not a reality show. We need to count every single vote. If that takes days or weeks, that needs to happen. And I hope that Noel can say it on record. I feel like a lot of Republicans have been hiding behind Donald Trump. So I hope that she can agree with me here.
I thought we were talking about voter enthusiasm, so I want to get to that point first, and then maybe I'll jump in on what Brad was saying. As a White House correspondent, I'll call it how I see it. Doesn't matter what party I'm from. So with respect to the voter enthusiasm, what I think has been really encouraging is that young people are voting like we've not seen before. We have seen, and this actually benefits Joe Biden, given the fact that so many of them lean Democratic. This is a worrying sign for Donald Trump. But with respect to Donald Trump saying that he wants to see a winner on election night, I don't know where those facts are coming from, because the reality is we know in North Carolina it's not going to happen. We know that that's the case also in Pennsylvania. So I don't know. I think that this is the big problem highlighted right there with this election, is that there's so much rhetoric and we have to stick to the facts.
Nicole, you were almost off the hot seat there, but I'm going to put you right back on it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you know what? I will agree with Brad on his earlier point that we need every vote counted. You know, that's the point of democracy. And I will also agree with the fact that we are seeing a record turnout among young people, which is very worrisome to the Trump-Pence ticket, because the younger voter tends to go a little bit more left-leaning for Democrats. So that is a little worrisome. And I think that that's why you have seen President Trump get on his plane and send Vice President Pence out, as well as other surrogates, to stop in states like Wisconsin, all over Florida, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona. I think that's why you are seeing him hold so many rallies, because they've got to do a last-minute push.
And I think if I can jump in, I think one of the problems and for the Trump ticket is the fact that they have Kamala Harris on the other side, and she really appeals and has energized that youthful vote. I mean, she shows up in blue jeans at rallies, and she dances, and she wears Converse sneakers. I mean, she just looks cool. And, in comparison to the rest of the candidates, it's kind of tough to compete. So there's also that problem, too. So I think...
I mean, look, I just want to disagree with pretty much everything Kimberly is saying. I think, one...
You don't like her outfit?
No, that is not the reason why young people are inspired in record historic numbers.
Well, I have a 19-year-old, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about. He's a first-time voter in Washington, D.C.
Young people are not voting because of her sneakers. Young people are voting because they understand what's at stake. And they understand that Donald Trump, you were trying to take the spotlight off of Republican strategists. This should be something that a White House correspondent from Al Jazeera should be talking about every single day. The President of the United States is trying to suppress the vote of millions of people.
Could you give us an example of what you're talking about? I mean, we were talking about voter enthusiasm. Excuse me?
Are you not a White House correspondent?
Well, I don't know why you're attacking my journalistic integrity, but if we're going to talk about journalistic curiosity, one of the things I do have to point out is the fact that we have seen on both sides an unwillingness of whether it's the conservative correspondents or the liberal correspondents.
I am calling time on this. I love a great debate, but you are taking us off track, Brad, and we only have a couple more days before Election Day. Let me get us back on track and bring in Kat Calvin, who's been talking about the mail-in ballots and how many people have already voted. Let's have a look.
As expected, 2020 has been a pretty wild year when it comes to elections. Our turnout has been unbelievable. We've seen early voting lines that have stretched for 8, 9, 11 hours. We have people who are voting by mail at incredibly high rates. So we know that Election Day is going to be a massive day. We know that the likelihood of us knowing who won on election night is very, very slim because there are just so many mail-in ballots.
This is the point you were trying to make, Kimberly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a little surprised by the defensiveness by one of the Democratic strategists, because I have to admit, right now what I'm saying is I'm I'm calling, as the polls are saying, I think this is going to be very difficult for Donald Trump to win. And this early voting enthusiasm, for example, in Texas, we've already seen more early mail-in ballots, which we know favors Democrats, than in terms of the numbers than turnout in 2016. It's astonishing. And we're seeing this across the board.
YouTube, I'm not ignoring you. Brain Filter says Trump is campaigning more than Biden. Noel, what do you say? We've lost your audio, Noel. I'm so sorry. I'll come back to you if I can. Let me just pick up there with you, Brad, in terms of the two candidates campaigning, how little time they have left.
Sure.
What are the two strategies that you're seeing? You can speak on because if your Democratic strategies, you're also seeing what the Republicans are doing. What are the Republicans doing? What are Democrats doing that's different?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone is campaigning. I think just to respond to Kimberly, it's not defensiveness. What I am concerned about is there is an integrity to our institutions and to our democracy that we are allowing Donald Trump to suppress the vote. So that's number one. Number two, I agree with you. The youth vote numbers are historic. Record number of young people and people of color are voting in Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina. The challenge right now is that there are tens of millions of ballots that have been put in the mail and have early voted. And I want to ensure, I have a brief window here to talk to the American people.
Right.
I want to ensure that every single one of those votes is counted. That is the most
there is a
important thing
process
that all
in
of us
place,
should
and
say.
in terms of those Trump legal challenges, while there might have been an effort, the institutions, which are healthy, have prevailed. For example, in North Carolina, there is going to
this president has circumvented
except that
every
that's not
single
what we're
institution.
talking about. We're talking about. I just want to keep us on track here. What we're talking about is the ability for the mail-in vote.
Less than 1 minute left. We had a debate where I was not expecting there to be a debate. It shows that the Democrats are in fighting form. Noel, talk to me, Noel. Yeah, Noel is nodding. She's a Republican strategist, and Kimberly is ready for anything. This is a good workout for November the 3rd.
Pretty much.
I was not expecting to put you in the lion's den, Kimberly. Anything can happen on a live show. Do appreciate you.
That's all right. I'm
Brad,
a mom. I'm used to it.
Thank you. Noel,
I'm fired up. I'm fired up here. Democracy is at stake.
Bringing the gas to the
conversation.
That's what we all agree on. Noel is laughing. Noel, we hear you. We're tapping into your thoughts as Republican strategist. Kimberly, good luck.
We've got our work cut out for us.
YouTube, thank you so much. You were excellent. Really love your punditry on this very special episode of The Stream, looking ahead to the US elections. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.